Hi, this is Tom Salemi. We're here at OIS at ASRS. Thank you for joining me, Charles Semba, Chief Medical Officer of Graybug.
Thanks for having me.
We've talked before on the podcast about your work with Sarcode, and we touched a little bit maybe on Forsight. I want to get into your work with innovation and innovative companies like Graybug, but I'm curious as to how you found your way into medicine and then into ophthalmology.
Well, in many aspects, the last place I should be is in ophthalmology.
Oh, don't say that. Come on. We're happy to have you here.
Started my career as a vascular interventional radiologist at Stanford University, so I spent my days doing complex thoracic aortic aneurysm repair and many endovascular procedures, and I had an opportunity to do my academic sabbatical at Genentech. And at Genentech is where someone tapped me on the shoulder to take a look at a project in age-related macular degeneration. I didn't even know what the disease was, let alone...
Sure, that sounds important.
But the commonality, the fascination was that as a vascular specialist, this was a vascular-related disease, but it happened to be in the different organ system. Instead of the blood vessel of the legs and arms and brain, it was in the eye. It was so fascinating that I decided within a month at Genentech to quit my job at Stanford and take a closer look. And so it was a calculated risk.
Wow. How much calculation went into that risk?
A lot, because, if it didn't work out, that is probably the biggest driver of paralysis for many physicians trying to make the decision of whether to leave their practice to come into industry.
Sure.
Is what if it doesn't work? But I felt I was young enough in my career that if I had to get back on the horse and dust off and start all over, so be it.
But being a physician is so much different than working in a company toward a long-term goal like developing a drug. And a physician, you're in control, you make decisions. Joining a larger company, you're kind of handing control over to a team, which is how things get done. Was that part of the consideration? And how did you did you have to move past that?
To be honest, ignorant was bliss. I really didn't know what I was getting into. Other than the fact that in my particular niche in medicine, I was essentially world-renowned for the types of surgical procedures I was doing. But there was a part of my brain that was really tired of doing that same hundreds and hundreds of cases, the same nature of cases. And I just felt intellectually, just for me personally, it wasn't sustainable for the next 20, 30 years of my career.
That's great.
So I was really hungry for a new opportunity, and I didn't know anything about biotechnology. And what I really liked about the fact that it was a lot of long-range planning, I kind of had an idea of what things would look like in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, because you have these projects with these long-range goals. In clinical practice, because it's so chaotic and hectic, every day was Groundhog Day. And so there really wasn't time to do a lot of forward thinking and planning, at least in our practice, of how we were going to expand and grow and defend turf and all those other things. So I really actually enjoyed the organization, the long-term thinking process.
Yeah. So what was the transition like? Did you enjoy the process? But
well, again, I was used to an environment where I'd walk into the procedure room and start barking out orders, and people would scurry around. And I'd come to Genentech, and people just looked at me and said, "Who are you? You're just a small cog in the greater piece." That was very immediately humbling. But I really embraced the concept that I didn't have to be the expert in all things. I could really leverage a lot of smart people around me. Whereas in academic practice, every man for himself. You're fighting for every square inch of office space and things like that, whereas in industry you have resources and a breadth of expertise to help you out.
That's fascinating. So obviously that project worked out okay for you. How did you move from Genentech to...
So the fascination with Genentech was the fact that I was able to get in the early stages of the development of ranibizumab for Lucentis, Lucentis development. And what I didn't appreciate at the time was just how the unmet need in the space was and how revolutionary the therapy was, how we were able to impact hundreds of thousands of people around the world. Wow, I mean, that was fascinating. A lot of parallels from what I was doing, a lot of angiograms, cross-sectional imaging, image-based decision-making, the same type of mentality that goes into being a skilled interventionalist in my prior area of medicine. So there was a lot of similarities.
Interesting. And you do hear that from physicians who say they join industry so they can help more people. They can impact thousands instead of hundreds. Do you get that same sense of satisfaction knowing you created such an important therapeutic?
Well, being in Silicon Valley, kind of what's in the drinking water is just this desire to change paradigms. Mm-hmm. And I was just thrilled for the fact that we were able to turn a disease area that really didn't have any successful therapies and to really revolutionize there. Not an incremental gain, but dramatically rewrite the textbooks in medicine. And that's intoxicating. And I just simply wanted more of that and to be able to embrace the horsepower of having a lot of smart people around me to help me out.
Right. So you went on to tackle another area that needed therapy.
So after successes at Genentech, I thought that would be pretty tough to top. But then I had an opportunity to tackle another thorny development issue, and that was dry eye. Mm-hmm. Many sponsors had tried to develop therapies, and perhaps a dozen or more companies had failed. And I was really fascinated by the challenge. Why was it so difficult to develop a product for dry eye? And I think, again, ignorance was bliss. I didn't come into the field with any preconceived biases of how the cornea should behave because I wasn't trained in cornea.
Yeah, no vessels for you even to kind of cling on to.
And so just with a lot of thinking and with a lot of evaluation of prior art, prior work in the field, how can we be smarter, more clever? What can we do that other people haven't done before to try to accomplish this goal? And we were ultimately successful in the development of lifitegrast for dry eye. And again, that was a huge paradigm changer in terms of finding the drug development path forward. Now, I think it's opened the doorway for many other companies now that are coming into the field. So,
absolutely.
So hopefully that was a significant contribution.
And then you found your way over to Forsight, that great group.
So in trying to fulfill a repertoire in ophthalmology, I had tackled neovascular AMD, ocular surface disease. The missing piece for me personally was glaucoma, kind of the three big pillars in drug development in the eye. And so Forsight afforded the opportunity to really evaluate glaucoma, sustain drug delivery, in reducing IOP and improving compliance for patients. And so that's really was the fascination, and they had really, really interesting technology.
So AMD, dry eye, glaucoma, you're kind of checking these things off the list.
Yeah, exactly. And just, try to be the continuing process of continue to learn. Exactly.
So do you still think as a doctor when you do all these approaches, as your MD still is an integral part of your day, or have you shifted over to entrepreneur?
No,
CMO?
I mean, at the end of the day, when I'm really, really interested, it really comes down to some simple concepts on what can we do to make things better for the patient and things easy for the doctor. Mm-hmm. I really think in really simplistic terms, how can we make treating these diseases easier for everyone involved in the whole care process? As long as you don't forget about the patient, things will work themselves out, and so that's just my approach in how I think about things.
Is that how you see the role of a CMO, and how do you describe it to someone who you might meet? Is it to bring that kind of real world experience and perspective to, something that's really different, drug discovery?
It's a fascinating area for a professional to grow in because it's going to be a new role that's a little bit different from practice. But I think to really master the task, you really have to be able to appreciate all things that go into developing an innovative product. You have to think about the intellectual property. You have to think about who's going to pay for it. You got to think about how easy is it to administer to the patient. Mm-hmm. How acceptable will it be to the patient? Will investors be able to get a return on their investment? And so, you have to be able to balance all of these things. What is the regulatory pathway? Can you devise a feasible clinical trial with an acceptable endpoint? And so I think really successful people in the role have to be able to take all of this information and distill it into a cogent, unifying program that gets all the team members on board, and you're working in a straight line.
That's quite a soup you've created there. There's a lot of ingredients in that.
Yeah, it's fun and insane and exasperating, and things never go as planned. And so, again, always being able to have backup plans. If this doesn't work, what are you going to do? And so it's the consummate chess game.
And now you're moving into drug delivery with Graybug. Can you bring us up to date on where the company is at?
So one of the unfulfilled things in my personal career was the fact that when we developed Lucentis, just because of the kinetics of the drug, we had to administer monthly injections for 2 years in these trials. These 2 years trials, and these patients had to undergo monthly intravitreal injections. We didn't know how this was really going to pan out in the real world. Clinical trials do not represent clinical reality or real-world medicine. And the problem that this therapy, even though it's so successful, these injectables, we're saddled with the situation for these poor patients that they have to come in so frequently for injections and maintenance, and it's very disruptive not only for the patients, but also for their loved ones who have to drive your mother or grandmother to the clinic, every 4 to 7 weeks, let's say, for the rest of their life. That I thought, there's got to be a way to do this better. Mm-hmm. Can my next move help bring a new therapy in which maybe we could do this once a year, twice a year?
That'd be amazing.
And so this is kind of, for me, a personal unfulfilled mission. Can we bring something new to the table that will make it easier for the doctors and patients?
And is the role much different than it is in a company where you're developing a drug, or is it a very similar experience?
Well, every CMO role is different.
Yeah.
Every company has its set of challenges. And this one is made a little easier in the sense that the clinical regulatory path has been well established with the FDA, so there are no questions on what's going to be an acceptable endpoint. In many areas of drug development, you don't know that because you're cutting a new path. You got to negotiate what the trial designs look like. At this stage in retinal, AMD, intravitreal injections, the path is pretty well identified. The structure of trials is pretty well understood. We just now have to be able to manufacture and execute the trials.
Right.
Yeah.
So now has this worked out? You don't think you have to go back into practice and practice medicine again?
Well, I question whether I'm going to recertify my interventional radiology boards. I'm having so much fun in ophthalmology. Perhaps one career regret is, I didn't pursue a career in ophthalmology. I wonder how much better in this role I could be if I was a fully fledged board-certified ophthalmologist. But
was that ever considered, or is just
never?
Really,
never. I envisioned myself as a endovascular surgeon, and again, the fascination there was the miniaturization of technology. Mm-hmm. From open surgical techniques now to miniaturization with catheters and image-guided therapy. And again, there's just a lot of parallels in ophthalmology with the miniaturization of tools and drug delivery and things of that nature. My only regret is I wish I could actually do it, do the intravitreal injections and some of these other procedures. But
well, we're all happy you found a way to carve a niche into this sector.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.